start without me.
I could stick around and get along with you. Hello, oh, oh, oh. It doesn't really mean that I'm into you. Hello, oh, oh, oh. You're alright, but I'm your darling to enjoy the party. Yeah, I think you're cute, but really you should know. I just came to say hello.
Okay, guys, he's not here yet. We have to start the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2,
Welcome to You Make the Call, Student Television's one and only sports talk and debate show. I'm your host, Andy Reeves. We've got a great show for you this evening. The Super Bowl was last night, so plenty to talk about there. We're also bringing back one of our favorite games called Face to Face. I think you'll really enjoy it. But before we get to that, I want to introduce my co-host for the evening. To my right, we have Eric Hall, his first time on the program. Great to have you with us, Eric.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And to his right, we have Ryan Davis. He's back for the billionth time. Great to have you back, Ryan.
Thanks, Andy. It's good to be here.
All right, well, let's jump right in. Super Bowl was last night. So all we've heard all week long is talk about legacies and whose is going to be built and whose is going to be tarnished. We'll start with Tom Brady, Ryan. Did this game hurt his legacy tremendously, or did it have not a whole lot of an effect?
I think it really didn't have much of an effect. Now, we were talking right before the show, and you were talking about how he didn't play too great in the second half, and that's true. But he also set the Super Bowl record for completions, consecutive completions, with 16 in the second and third quarters. So you can't say that he didn't have a good game. And I think that, for me at least, the biggest thing that happened is he didn't step into the all-time greats category in terms of great performance throughout his career and lots of Super Bowl titles. But I don't think this really hurts his legacy at all. He had the one interception and had a couple of drop balls in that last drive. But I don't think he did anything to hurt himself necessarily.
Eric, what about you?
I mean, honestly, being a New York fan, regardless, hard for me to say, but I mean, he's still an elite quarterback. And even going into next season, we're still going to be saying that he is an elite quarterback. He's one of the best out there. He wins games. He knows how to win games. I mean, come on, they almost went perfect. Fortunately, losing to the Giants, and which built itself up again last night. They lost to them again. But no matter what, he's still a top quarterback in the league, makes great plays. He's a leader on his team. Like, he is the face of the franchise of the New England Patriots. And he won 3 rings already, winning 3 Super Bowls in 1 decade. So, I mean, yeah, you lost last night, but I mean, I think his legacy as a Super Bowl champ and possible future Hall of Famer is already set.
You see, I just think it's silly to put too much on one game or even 2 games. You go back to the last Super Bowl they were in when they lost that game. He is a great quarterback, and I am a well-documented Tom Brady hater, I will admit. I am not a fan of the man, but he is a great football player, and there's no doubt about it. He's won games year in and year out. He's won 3 Super Bowls. And I'm just not a believer in putting all the importance on one game, whether it be the Super Bowl or Week 1. It's all about what you do over time. And I think he has been consistently great. And so I agree with you guys. I really don't think this game has hurt his legacy. But what about Belichick?
See, this one is a little different for me. Now, I don't think that this is tarnishing his legacy either. He's still one of the all-time great coaches in the history of the NFL. But these 2 Super Bowl losses now within 5 years and not playing well in the playoffs for the past few years, I think is what really hurts him. And maybe you could say that he's lost the edge or whatever it was that he had that made those teams so great for so long. Maybe, now the game obviously hasn't passed Belichick by, but maybe he hasn't made the adjustments that other coaches like Tom Coughlin have made down at the end of the line to win those close games. And going for letting the Giants score there with a minute left, I think that whether it's good or bad for Belichick's legacy, I mean, it certainly took a lot of guts to do something like that on the biggest stage in football. So for me, at least that element of the game, I give Belichick credit for doing something that almost no other coach would do, and I think that Coughlin didn't see coming.
Eric, how do you feel about Belichick's legacy now?
Once again, I mean, the man is still a genius. He's a football genius. He knows what he's doing. I mean, yeah, he didn't make the adjustment. He let them score at the last minute. But, I mean, once again, as I said for Tom Brady, he solidified himself as a coach and one of the coaching elites in this league. We win 3 rings in 1 decade. I mean, and with every team that he has, he knows how to handle them. He knows how to deal with them. He knows how to motivate them. Especially that team, they know how to draft really well. Like, they always bring in pieces that you wouldn't think fit. But then again, here they are back in the postseason every single season. So, yeah, I mean, this tarnished his record a little bit. But I mean, he's going into next season. As I said before, we're going to be talking about the Pats. We're going to be talking about Brady. We're going to talk about Belichick and the game plan on the road to getting another Super Bowl.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of the same things from you guys about both of these guys, that their legacies are already pretty well established. But when you look at their recent history, whether it be playoff performance, whether it be success in the regular season even, when you go back and look at some of that and what they've done over the past few seasons since that almost perfect season of 4 years ago, I believe it was, can you really say that they're still at the top of the game?
I think that the fact that they're still at the top of the NFL, the Patriots were the #1 seed in the AFC this year. This team is still at the top of the league. Now, the AFC was a little weaker this year than in the past, and the Patriots' defense really wasn't very good at all. And if Belichick's calling card has been his defense throughout his career, then how does he answer to having one of the league's worst defenses now this year? But taking that terrible defense for the most part and making it to the Super Bowl, I think that says a lot about this team. And so to answer the question, yes, I think they're still at the top of their game. Maybe the rest of the league has started to catch up a bit. But I still think the Patriots are going to be one of the top teams in the league for the next 3-5 years. However long Brady is the quarterback of this team, they'll continue to be very good.
To be honest, I have to agree with all those points. I mean, great coaches made great adjustments, and yes, they had the worst D. And I mean, for me, I realized that their D was bad when they played Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh just aired the ball out the whole entire time, and no one expected that. I mean, everyone thought it would be a real good game, but Pittsburgh did air the ball out and scored as many touchdowns as possible. But no matter what, worst defense, almost one of the worst defenses in the league, and you're still in the Super Bowl. So I mean, he's a great coach. He knows what he's doing. He makes the adjustments. Fortunately, he lost yesterday, whatever. But I mean, regardless, he's still a good guy. Still
okay,
a good coach.
well, the Patriots bandwagon still has a couple of guys on board, I guess.
Actually, not really.
All right, well, let's move on to the New York Giants. Now, the legacy conversation is just as important on that side. Eli Manning has been compared nonstop to Peyton, it seems, since this playoff run began. What do you think this Super Bowl win did for Eli's legacy, Eric? I
think, honestly, he's finally stepped out of his shadow of his brother, of being the little brother of Peyton Manning, and as they're now calling him elitist, I mean, he's showing that he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And just because, he doesn't, have that fire like other quarterbacks have had, like Brett Favre, maybe Aaron Rodgers and stuff like that. But, I mean, he's very calm, cool, collective, and that's what brought them to a Super Bowl championship for the second time. I mean, he runs his game the way he runs it overall. But, I mean, this has done a lot for his legacy. I mean, especially with the New York media, he gets criticized so much, and that's because that's how New Yorkers are. But for the most part, he's handled that pressure well and delivered another championship title for New York City and the New York State.
Ryan?
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that Eli has finally stepped out of Peyton's shadow, and you see Peyton go down this year with Eli saying at the beginning of the season that he was one of those elite quarterbacks, and everyone kind of laughed it off. I mean, you think that Eli, you're a good quarterback, but he makes too many mistakes, throws too many interceptions. And this year, he really stopped that. He stopped making the big mistakes and only making the big plays. Set the record this year for the most fourth-quarter comebacks in NFL history. Now, the team wasn't great, but he still did it. The only team to ever win a Super Bowl without winning 10 games in the regular season. And he was the leader of all of it. And you see that he is the leader of this offense. He is the leader of this team, and they have faith in him. And he wins the big game against Tom Brady, who along with Peyton has been the guy in the NFL for the past 10, 15 years. So when you see Eli do all of these things, I think he's solidified himself as one of the elite quarterbacks in the league, but even more so as one of the big-time quarterbacks making plays in the clutch in the fourth quarter on the biggest stage.
Now, before this season, I don't think which Manning brother is better would have been a conversation worth having. I've long thought that Peyton Manning is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But, guys, now that Eli has one more ring than Peyton does, and we may never see the same Peyton Manning again, do you think it's a conversation worth having, and do either of you lean towards Eli?
I mean, I'm leaning towards Eli. You know, he finally stepped out of a very, very big shadow set up by Peyton. I mean, Peyton was basically one of the top quarterbacks in the league, and there comes his little brother coming up right behind him. Not only does he have 2 championship rings, but he also has 2 Super Bowl MVPs. I mean, that says a lot. Even though the Giants had a lot of players out there who did their thing, Chase Blackman was one of the big guys who came up for them, Ahmad Bradshaw. But yes, the game was all on Eli's shoulders. So 2 MVPs, 2 Super Bowls, for me, that makes the better player.
Yeah, this is not a good time to be buying Peyton Manning stock, I don't think. Or maybe it's a good time to buy it. I mean, it's about as low as it has ever been with him not playing for the last year and Eli playing so well. I can't take Eli over Peyton. I think that Peyton is just too talented. Has put up the numbers for such a long period of time. But again, talent is not the determinant of greatness. And I think it would be hard to argue that Eli's teams historically have been better than Peyton's teams. He's been on some of the best teams in the NFL over the past 10 years, only 1 ring. So I would take Peyton on any given day to be the quarterback for my team, but I think the conversation might be worth having in terms of who do you want in the 4th quarter.
That's an interesting point, Ryan. Well, let's talk about the coach of the New York Giants, Tom Coughlin, a guy that was probably about to get fired a couple of times here in the last 4 years, but then he goes out and wins a Super Bowl. What does that say about him, and what kind of legacy has he established?
Well, for me, I'm a huge Tom Coughlin fan, and if you guys have been watching this show long enough, you know that I'm a big-time Jacksonville Jaguars fan. So I'm a big fan of Tom Coughlin, everything he did with the Jaguars. Couldn't win a ring there, just not a very talented team. But he goes to New York, and he kind of shows the league what he's made of and how good of a coach he is. I think in 2007, before that season, there was a lot of talk about him getting fired as well. He goes out and wins the Super Bowl, and now the same thing again. So Tom Coughlin, if anything, for me, I think that he's one of the best coaches in the league at taking a team that no one really gives a chance. No one gave the Giants a chance in the preseason. No one gave them a chance going into the playoffs, and taking that underdog mentality and bringing them to the top. And he's done that time and time again with the Giants, and he has to be one of the best coaches in the league right now, at the very least.
I mean, to be honest with you, I've never seen someone become this close to being fired and no matter what, still be there the next season. I mean, he knows how to will his team to victory, even when they have bad years. Like right after the Super Bowl, they lost Plaxico. No matter what, they kept rebuilding, they kept moving forward, and now they were back on the stage they were yesterday as Super Bowl champs. I mean, to me, he is one of the best coaches in the league. To be honest with you, he came out with a good game plan for the most part. I mean, had to work with his players during a very exciting time, was able to just get them focused and have a very good game, come out with a good game plan. And to me, honestly, like, good game plan, you're doing well as a coach overall. I think that solidified his legacy overall.
Probably pretty safe to assume his job is safe for the next 4 years, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as he wants to keep coaching. I mean, he's 65.
That's a good point. Yeah. So we'll see how far he can take his legacy after this game.